Hey, what's up, the mightiest nation on the whole of YouTube? How's it going? I'm Mighty Mapper 123, and in today's video we're going to be overlooking the battle map of Army Men of War. So it has been a good while since we last did a story time for this series, so I thought today we're going to knock out a quick story time. I'm going to tell you part of the history of the Tan Empire, the rise of the Tan Rebellion, General Sahara, how the Tans were kicked over to South Viet-Tan, which is over here, and what kicked off the Tanger-Tan Wars. So right here we have the battle map, we have everything which has been happening in real time. We can see good old nuked Greenington over there, look, well, what's left of it anyway. We have Blutania up in the north, we have Growl, we have the Red Union, and more really, and Eastern Blutania over here. So every one of these units that you can see on this battle map represent one company of men, and one company of men is, I think, anywhere between 85 to 150 soldiers. So we can see at this precise moment that the Oranges are mobilizing against the Reds because they have just left the GOR and they wanted to become an independent state. And the reason being for that is because they have found an unbelievable amount of wealth. In fact, I forgot to position where it is, but it is in this mountainous area right here, and they are currently mining plasticium from this area, and they have found enough to become an independent nation. They don't have to rely on the other nations financially anymore. They're basically rich. So the Oranges, under the command of Sultan Laventine, are currently building up their army. They're on a a balanced growth policy. They're building up their military might and they're building up their economy, so the two kind of fall onto each other, which means that they've got they're just growing. They're growing and growing and growing. Their technology is getting better every single day. We do have some T-34s over here, but these just represent tank divisions. They could have a mix of different tanks in there as well, as we know that the Tangerians do have the T-55s also. So anyway, I'm going to read to you guys now what the history of Tangeria and the Tan Empire. So this is called the Rise of a Rebel, the Rebellion in Tangeria. So the rebellion in Tangeria dates back only since the fall of the late Tan Empire. The Tan Empire was one of the biggest superpowers in the whole of Plastica. They stretched from the Great Green River all the way to the far coastlines of Viet-Tan. So the Great Green River is this river right here. As you can see, they're still constructing that bridge. It should be done by now, to be honest. I might complete that in for one of the next videos, so let me know in the comments what we should do with the bridge. Should we start bringing soldiers across and really push the front line onto Orange Tangeria? That's if the Tangerians don't make some sort of new treaty, as technically speaking they do have a new government now. They have a new they have a new policy now that they're out of the GOR, so we could even be seeing them ally with the Greens if the Greens have it. I know that the Green King didn't want it, but the Green King is currently knocked out. He's asleep inside the Millie Mountains right here. So anyway, let's continue to read this. So we have the Great Green River, which is on the left there. We have the Great Tangetan River, which is over here, and then we have the far coastlines of Viet-Tan. So this all used to be the Tan Empire. All of this forest right here, all up here, and all of this continent right here as well, all the deserts. And the old capital of the old Tan Empire would have been Istanbul, which is this port right here, because they all used to trade among each other right here, look. But they moved it to Tangiers after the, I think it was the crowning of the second Tan Emperor. So anyway, let's continue reading from this piece of notepad right here. So after the economic collapse of the Tan Empire, which was brought on by their defeat in the human dimension, so that's the whole of Series 1, what General Tannenberg did in Series 1 affected the whole of Series 2. So the Tans could no longer sustain their great expenses, both militarily and economically. No plasticium was coming through the now confiscated portal that they once relied on, so all of the factions, mainly from the RGB coalition, would have relied on plasticium coming through from the human dimension to the plastic dimension, because they're very limited on finding mines. It's a bit like our oil. They use it to power their cars, they use it to power their lights, everything is reliant on plasticium in the plastic world, and there is a huge abundance of plastic in the human world, you see. So that's why they bring them through the portals, and I will explain in another video in the future how the portals work and how the portals came to be. They've got a sort of a paranormal aspect going for them. So anyway, so the UPN Council, made up of conglomerates of very powerful green and blue leaders, decided that the orange race could be a threat to the West if they are successful in overthrowing the Tan government. So no plasticium coming through the portals led to large forms of orange slave rebellions all across Tangeria, because the Tans used to have the oranges as slaves. They saw them as an inferior plastic race. So what they wanted to do, the Greens and the Blues, they wanted to put in place a loyal adversary, and the current Tan Prime Minister at the time, called Platos, who is now the leader of Viet Tan, he would be a puppet to the Western nations and influence the Unionist opposition in the north. So you can see that the Greens and the Blues, the Western nations, were having a bit of trouble with the northeastern nations being the Red Union, as unionism was spreading like wildfire, a little bit like communism in our world. And unionism is, I think it's socialism, nationalism and communism all rolled into one sort of ideology. And then we have on the West imperialism, and imperialism is basically monarchs which make their own rules. So they make the rules as they see fit if they're in power. So what it was is, let's read the rest of it, sorry about this. The Red Union leader, right, was called Tsar Ruskin. He opposed the treaty of the RGB coalition by funding a ruthless young psychopath called Rumek. Rumek was a orange rebel. He was like an orange paramilitary. And the orange race rose up under his banners, and in just 2 weeks they managed to charge the imperial palace of the Tan Empire and kill the Tan Emperor in cold plastic. So you can see that the Tan Emperor would have been weak because he's lost all of it. He can't pay his soldiers. Basically it's a crumbling nation due to no plastic coming through the human dimension. So this led to outrage among the leaders of the UPN Council. It sickened the Green King, as he threatened Ruskin, the leader of the Red Union at the time, to stop funding the Oranges. And it worked. The threats worked on Ruskin, and he stopped the funding, but at the cost of them already being too late. Rumek had already declared himself the Orange Republic of Tangeria's leader, so he had declared himself the Sultan. Thus began the reign of the new Orange Master Race. The new Tangerian leader was fuming, as himself and his old race was excommunicated then from the UPN Council, and they had no right to rule, for one, and they were also classed as inferior to the other races. So basically, because the Oranges were always picked on, they were classed as a slave race to the Tans. They had no right to rule. They were basically a rebellion which overthrew their government, and the Greens did not want them in power as they had more unionist tendencies, as Ruskin funded them. So that was not good for the Greens. So the Greens were like, no, we can't have this, and they excommunicated them from the rest of the United Plastic Nations. So the new Tangerian leader was fuming as he was excommunicated, and even Tsar Ruskin had betrayed him after working so hard to put him in power. Right, so Tangeria was alone, and Tangeria was very angry. Instantly, Sultan Rumek made plans to convert the Tan fleet into a super orange armada. So the orange armada, I think, is sunk now. It's down here, look, you can see it's under the water due to the purples and the greens. I think we do have some of their battleships up here still as well, which are currently blockade porting the greens, which are over here, which this could end soon. I don't know why has he got a blue hat. I don't know, maybe his green hat is in the wash. So yes, the West soon retaliated, right? Oh, I'm missing a bit here. Let's go back in time, So Tangeria was alone, and they were very angry. Instantly, Sultan Rumek made plans to convert the Tan fleet into a super orange armada. He also plotted the assassination of the Green King in his green capital of Greenington. His plots led him to failure though, as the Green King survived the attacks and the armada was soon destroyed. by the Royal Green Air Force. He then fled back to his capital in Tangiers. So that was the first ever battle in this series, and we can see where it all happened. This is where Sultan Rumek led his armada, and he attacked Valiput, and that was just after he attempted to assassinate the Green King by funneling some of his soldiers into the city walls, because they used to have very open borders, the Greens did, and Oranges were allowed into the city. So shortly after the assassination attempt, they did start sending away all of the other races out of Greenland. So that's Oranges, Tans, Reds, Blues, the lot of them. They all got shipped back to their own countries, basically, their own nations. And among them was the Green Princess. She moved away to go and find her long-lost love, which was the Major, right? So that was Princess Ivy. And she didn't want to become queen, you see. She didn't have it in her. She's a very ladylike person, you see. Didn't want to have the responsibility or the power, really. Not until... Maybe she'll have the power in the future, though. Maybe the Greens will brainwash her and make her into the brutal queen that she might become. Mohaha. That's if the king dies. Maybe you guys could let me know in the comments as well. So anyway, the West soon retaliated, right, after the attack on Valiput. Yes, and they attacked the Orange rebels by invading their port city of Istanbul, but unknowingly offending the now angry Red Union. So if you remember back in the series, they attacked here, right here with the Blues. They made a deal with King Scot-free that says, I'll tell you what, if we take Istanbul, I will give you Istanbul if you take it. I mean, it's a good port city. It'd make a lot of money with all the trade. But at that current time, the Red Union had their own rebellion, and Tsar Ruskin was actually overthrown by his own Unionist Party government, which they imprisoned their own leader, and then Tsar Valentin then stepped up and became the leader of the new Red Union. I don't know why some of these hats are blue. I think there's a bit of a glitch going on here, but I'll have to fix that. But yes, so Tsar Ruskin was out of power, and the Reds then started to take apart their government, and they completely destroyed the relationship they had with the Greens and the Blues by disbanding the RGB coalition. So after they disbanded the RGB coalition, right, they kind of fell out with the Blues and the Greens, and the Greens had no choice but to pull out of Istanbul, because it could potentially cause another world war, which they didn't want, because this was basically just a proxy war at the time. So where are we? Let's have a look. So at this point in time, the Red Union went through something similar to the late Tans, as Don Valentin, the head of the Unionist People's Party, rebelled against his Tsar, claiming him to be imperialist and a sympathizer to Western ideologies. The Red people backed him and imprisoned their own leader, therefore crowning Valentin as Tsar of the new Red Union. Red Union. After his inauguration, Tsar Valentin liquidated the trade agreement between the Red Union and the Western nations, ultimately destroying the RGB coalition pact. He then began the mobilization of all nationalist Red forces and planned the restoration of the glorious Red Union. This included the new treaty of the GOR. So this is when the GOR came into play, and that was the Greys, the Oranges, and the Reds made an alliance. The Oranges and the Greys had different roles in the GOR. The Reds had the military, the Greys had the technology, and the Oranges had the space. They had the facilities, they had the storage, if you know what I mean. So they made a very good three-way, let's just say that. So after this, the GOR was formed, the Greens wanted to get back at the Unionist parties, which were all parts of the GOR, the Greys, the Oranges, and the Reds. So what they did was they staged a coup by sending Platos down to southern Vietnam. They sent him with millions of plastic credits, and then over time they completely liberated Vietnam. So that's when things started to get a little bit interesting. So this included the new treaty of GOR, yes. Tension grew in the world of Plastica as the Greens funded a coup in Vietnam to, one, give the Tans hope in the restoration of the empire, and two, the Greens had a foothold just in case the war was to break out with the Red Union. The south of Vietnam was declared the land of exile for all Tan people. So let's go down there. So this is where the Oranges sent all of the Tan people, and this is where Sahara is going to start to come into it, because General Sahara is a veteran of the First Great Plastic War, an old friend of Platos as well, who is the current president of Viet Thanh. So the south of Viet Thanh was declared the land of exile for all Tan people. Other Tans were made to be slaves to the Oranges. After all, it was karma, as the Tans had enslaved and mistreated them for generations, so the Tans were not good people. So in Army Men of War, there is no good guys and there is no bad guys. If anything, I think they're all bad guys. So when people in the Discord are like, nope, that, you're making us out to be bad guys. No, it's not true. Everybody is bad. So with this new Orange leadership, there was no place for a Tan anymore, until one man decided enough was enough, and he began ambushing convoys, killing policemen, and standing up for the Tan people. His name was Sahara. Him and his gang practically ruled Saigon, which is this town right here, and they were like the Robin Hood / mafia of the country. Being a nationalist at heart, Sahara saw it in his best interest to move his mischief from Viet Thanh and begin fighting Tangeria from within. So this was before the Tangetan Wars. He decided to move over to Tangeria and start a rebellion from within, because he wanted his homeland back. That's where he was born, you see. He knew that with the Greens and Blues opposing the Tangerians, that they would perhaps not even last a week. But with the new forming of the GOR, it made things a little bit more complicated. The Tangerians found unmeasurable amounts of wealth in their mountains. This made them a valuable asset to the GOR. So after they found this wealth in the mountains, all this plasticium, the Greys and the Reds wanted to keep the Oranges around, but the Oranges have just thought to themselves, wait, we kind of don't need the other nations anymore. We have achieved our dream. We've just gotten ourselves out of debt from the old Tan Empire. We have all of this plasticium. We can pump out all of these tanks, all of these new units. We have thousands, hundreds of thousands of civilians around the country, that are willing to join up. Ex-slaves of the Tan Empire. They could even bring the Tans in themselves and put them into those, what they're called, those certain regiments which they throw on the front line. Operation Human Shield, that's it. So anyway, Sahara began his crusade by rescuing Tan slaves and liberating them from the Tangerians. The men would then become his soldiers. Sahara was familiar with the atrocities and the genocide that the new government was committing against his people. He would save them in the hundreds, from anything to raiding wagon trains, all the way to liberating work camps. He has bases all over Tangeria, mainly in the cover of the open desert. So I know it's in the cover of the open desert, there's not really much cover, but it's that open and there's as many miles of desert. They're not going to find a small band of Tans, are they really? So you can see all of the Tan companies just stationed around. Look, some of them are near the trees. I think Sahara himself is over here in this little ruined sort of town in the middle of the desert. So that's his base of operations at the minute, and what he does is he just jumps out of nowhere and attacks when they least expect it. You can still see what was left of the Battle of Zava over here. He lost a lot of men. In fact, he nearly lost all of his men. Luckily, he's had enough time to recuperate his forces and, gather some troops ready for more battles in the future. So anyway, Sahara fought the Tangerians ever since the start of the war. And that's pretty much it, really. I mean, Sahara he's a good guy. He has like unionist tendencies. He leans more towards the left than the right in this series, so he's more imperialist. More unionist rather than imperialist. So he does have some Red sympathies, and he does share the same beliefs as some of the Reds. But at this precise moment in time, he is desperate. He'll take any help that he can get. So ever since the Tangetan Wars happened and Viet Thanh became an independent nation, Platos became the president. He was opposed by Sahara as he wanted to become president. He saw his chance, but Platos had more votes and he became the president instead. So Platos congratulated Sahara for his hard work after the Tangetan Wars, and he congratulated him because he kept the spirits of the Tan people alive, and also for many years, he congratulated him and rewarded him for all the people he saved and all of the Tangerians that he killed, because he killed many. He rewarded him with full funding of plastic credits from the Vietnamese government, Also, Tan weapons, vehicles and more were smuggled across the Tangetan River by boat and by air. The Greens even chipped in by offering intel on locations of work camps to recruit more soldiers, high priority targets and more. They reward Sahara handsomely. There is never any short of Tan slaves fleeing to join the freedom fighters that we call Sahara's men. To this very video, he is still out there bringing the Oranges to justice for what they did to his precious Tan Empire. So even after his loss in the Battle of Zava, he manages to bounce back by rallying more troops to his cause. Some even sneak out of Viet Tan just to join him, at the risk of sparking another conflict between the Tangerians and Viet Tan. And the reason they don't fight at the moment, because the Vietnamese people have been very quiet, and that's because the Reds have been sending diplomatic deals their way, trying to get them a part of the GOR. So maybe that could actually happen in the future. I'm going to let you guys decide whether they join the GOR or not. I'll probably do that in the Discord. But yeah, that's pretty much it really for the Tan Empire. I don't know if I explained it right. There's a lot of stuttering in there, but I wanted to just clear, get that off my chest, because I've been getting a lot of questions and a lot of confusion on how the Tans keep getting so many men out of nowhere, and that's because there's a lot of Tans still in Tangeria, and it's a bit like Spartacus. If you're familiar with the story of Spartacus, all of the Roman slaves would just flee their masters and come and join Spartacus and the slave rebellion, and that's pretty much what's happening in Tangeria itself. But Tangeria, the Oranges are doing really well to fight it in the story. So yeah, I'm really glad everyone's enjoying it. I can't believe how much you guys enjoy it, because there's so many of you now that are really enticed in this series. There's a lot of roleplay involved. I mean, there's a ton of propaganda, which is really cool. I mean, I'll have to do a video of its own just showcasing you some of the propaganda that you guys put in the Discord. I mean, it's super awesome, the community that we've grown around this series. So hopefully we can make more series as successful in the future as well. But for now, we're going to keep this one going, as you guys just seem to absolutely love it. So anyway, I hope that cleared a lot of things up. We're going to do a few more story times in the future, covering the laws of other nations. I am going to fix that blue hat. I don't know why it's gone blue. But yes, you can kind of see everything that's going on at the minute around the world. Look, you can see the positions. You can see the last battle that we did, which there is going to be a link in the description. You can see that there is no clear front line. This was where the remnants just all spazzed out and had a right fight right here. So yeah, so anyway, I'm MightyMapper123. I hope you enjoyed this video. So remember to smash that like button, also drop a bomb on that subscribe button, and also, most important of all, stay mighty.